What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Conor McGregor compares Nunes-Pena rivalry to his versus Nate Diaz. Conor McGregor saw a lot of similarities between his rivalry with Nate Diaz and the rivalry between Amanda Nunes and Julianna Pena. McGregor went to Twitter to voice his opinions on the female fighters who headlined the UFC 277 event in Dallas, Texas this past weekend. It was an incredible fight, though Nunes made the case for a unanimous decision win. McGregor was a two-division champion, just like Nunes was a two-division champion when they first met their opponents. In his case, Nate Diaz. In Amanda's case, Pena, the highly touted champion, lost the first fight via submission. Then, in the rematch, the loser came back much improved and cracked the opponent several times, dropping them many times throughout the fight on their way to a decision victory. It's basically a parallel of each other. This is just a piece of what McGregor stated after the UFC 277 main event. And then the Nunes-Pena rematch goes the exact same way in the second fight as mine with Diaz. Dropped multiple times, just better prepared, cracks with the shots, gets dropped multiple times, but the toughness is still there. She's still on Amanda's face. Diaz is still on my face. Some fights are iconic mixed martial arts bouts. Amanda is a double champ. I'm double champ. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I don't know. It's a mad scene. Nate Diaz beat McGregor back in March 2016 via submission, but McGregor came back to win via decision at UFC 202. Amanda was submitted by Pena in December 2020, only to come back and win via decision at UFC 277. The only real difference here is that Nunes dominated Pena all throughout 5 rounds, while McGregor outpointed Diaz in a bit of a more even fight than their female counterparts. What do you think of McGregor's comparison here? Ali Abdelaziz tells fighters who don't like the UFC pay to go to other promotions. Fighter pay has been a hot topic of conversation, especially with regard to the UFC, for several years, especially after the Reebok deal, which basically did away with sponsors and brands paying fighters top dollar to be on their shorts, and much more. Talk about fighter unions always follows complaints about criticism about the pay that UFC fighters receive. While the debate rages on, the headlines are still being written about the next fighter who criticizes the UFC over fighter pay. Well-known manager Ali Abdelaziz says that if you don't like it, there are plenty of other promotions one could fight for. Case in point, this is what Ali stated with regards to UFC president Dana White.
He does so much stuff for fighters without even people knowing. Spend probably millions of dollars a year helping other people out. He doesn't really have to, And everybody wants to criticize fighter pay. Okay, if you don't like the UFC, don't go sign with the UFC. If you have Bellator, you have PFL, you have ONE FC, go sign them.
Fighters like Francis Ngannou, Israel Adesanya, Tony Ferguson, Aljamain Sterling, and others have been vocal about having the UFC pay their lesser-known athletes a competitive fight purse. But on the other side of that coin are other fighters like Michael Chandler and Valentina Shevchenko, who say that things are pretty much fine. What do you think about the UFC's fighter pay? And what do you make of Ali's statements here? Julianna Pena issues statement after UFC 277 loss. The main event for UFC 277 saw Amanda Nunes recapture the undisputed UFC Women's Bantamweight title over Julianna Pena, avenging her loss from UFC 269 last December. Pena ate a ton of shots during the fight and was dropped several times all throughout. Still, her tenacity and stubbornness made her difficult to put away, and for that, she got a ton of respect, given how much better Nunes looked compared to the first fight. Nunes was able to take control of the striking exchanges and beat Pena on the feet, on her way to a unanimous decision win. After the loss, Pena took to Instagram to thank her fans and issue a statement. Tougher than a $2 steak. Thanks for the love, everyone. Just a cat scratch that required a few stitches. No chunks missing. No surgery necessary. Love you all. We're 1-1 now. People's Champ. Trilogy. Pena vs. Nunes 3. Best compliment of the day for my boy Michael Chiesa. Pena is certainly gunning for a trilogy fight, given that she won the first bout. However, Nunes seems to favor a defense of her featherweight title first, which means any plans for a bantamweight title fight would have to be on hold for a bit. What do you make of Pena calling for a trilogy bout in her statement? And do you want to see a third fight between these two? Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the MMA Zone to stay up to date on all the latest fight news. Dana White didn't think having Deiveson Figueiredo in the cage during Moreno's moment was respectful. Brandon Moreno got the job done at UFC 277, beating Kai Kara France in the third round with a vicious liver kick that sent the Kiwi fighter to the mat. It was a well-placed, beautifully timed liver kick that was enough to get Moreno the victory, as well as the interim flyweight title. The win means that Moreno will book a fourth and likely final fight between him and Deiveson Figueiredo, the undisputed champion. After the fight of the weekend, Moreno was speaking with Joe Rogan during the in-cage post-fight interview. And while Moreno pointed out where Figueiredo was in order to speak to him directly, someone from the UFC green-lighted the security staff to allow Figueiredo to walk into the cage during the interview. It resulted in a pretty intense face-off in the cage, with both men speaking with one another, though there was a ton of respect going both ways, and Moreno chose to squash any beef he had with the Brazilian, as the two shook hands with their belts slung over their shoulders. In that moment, Figueiredo also stated his intention to have this fight set up in Brazil, given that they've fought multiple times in parts of the US where Moreno basically enjoys a home advantage given the proximity to his home country of Mexico and the amount of Mexican and Mexican-American fans there are in those regions. After the fight, Dana White spoke about how he instantly regretted having Figueiredo walk inside the cage during Moreno's interview. This is what he stated about that.
It was kind of an in-the-moment thing, and then when he got up there, I was like, well, that was fucking rude. We shouldn't. This kid is having his moment, and he's got Figueiredo standing in his face, but it happened. It wasn't horrible, and we meant no disrespect to Moreno, but came off pretty disrespectful.
Do you agree with Dana White here? Hasim Rahman Jr. talks about the cancellation of the Jake Paul fight. By now, you must have heard that the anticipated fight between Jake Paul and Hasim Rahman Jr. has been canceled, just a week before the event at Madison Square Garden. A statement released from Jake Paul's management team alleged that Rahman Jr. was not going to be able to make weight for the fight and accused the fighter of bad faith assurances that he would. The fight was set to take place at 205 pounds. This is how Rahman Jr. responded to that statement from Paul's team. Why he doesn't have this energy in person though? Biggest payday of my life? I already made 4 times what you offered off of sparring. Now you want to paint the narrative to not let me on anyone's card because you know the people are going to demand us? Hashtag Jake fraud. Why am I weighing in 2 and 3 weeks before the fight, Daniel? I didn't even get a chance to hit the scale on August 5th like the contract said. How's the fight off on me when they canceled the event? Rahman Jr. also posted some videos on Twitter explaining his side of the story, and basically, he's blaming Jake Paul and his team for the whole thing. This is a piece of what he stated.
Fight. All he gotta do is say, okay, I beat you up at 230, I beat you up at 215. I'm still coming down in weight, or I beat you up at 210. I'm still coming down in weight, but he don't want to do it because he don't want a real competitive fight. He wanted me to be a shell of myself when we got in there and got in that ring.
Rahman Jr. was also answering questions from fans and stated that since he took the fight, he's already lost as much as about 20 pounds. He also stated that he's getting fined 25% per pound he's over the 205-pound limit, and that a week from the fight, he's at 215 pounds. He went on to say that he'd even fight for free, or close to it, just to knock Jake Paul out, and accused them of using the weight as an excuse to get out of the fight, and also to save face for not selling many tickets. What do you think about this whole situation? Are you bummed out that the fight was canceled? And who do you believe here? Today's video was packed with some juicy stories from the fight world. What are your thoughts about what's going on in MMA? Don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to the MMA Zone to see more videos just like this. See you next time.